So for the previous generation G30 BMW 5 Series, the Canadian market got the 530e as well as the M550. Now those two models represented really different things, the 530e being an efficient plug-in and the M550, well, it had a twin turbo V8. Now for this generation G60, there's no longer an M550 and the 530e is not available in Canada. What we have instead is sort of a two-in-one, a split personality if you will, the BMW 550e. Let's check it out. Here in Canada, you can choose between 5 different powertrain options. The 530, which is an ICE model, the i540, the i5 M60, which are electric models, and then you have 2 plug-in hybrid models, which this one being one of them, the 550e, and then the M5. The 550e has a starting price of just under 90,000 Canadian dollars, but this one as tested is about 105 grand because this has a lot of options installed, including the $5,000 BMW individual macadamia metallic paint job. Now there's no question in my mind that this paint color looks amazing, especially under the sun, but the G60 generation as a whole, I don't know. I just am not as much of a fan of compared to the G30 generation. I think the G30 LCI, specifically the M5s, they just look so cool. I will say, however, that the touring version of this generation, so the G61, look a lot cooler in my books, but unfortunately here in Canada, you can only get that in the M5. So BMW, if you could bring in more touring models, that'd be great. Anyway, let's talk about the plug-in hybrid powertrain. So for the 550e, the total combined output is 483 horsepower and 516 pound-feet of torque. Power, of course, comes from 2 portions, the engine portion and the electric motor portion. The engine portion consists of the B58 inline-6 3-liter engine, which has a twin-scroll turbocharger. In this application, the engine is slightly detuned compared to the 40 models, so it produces 313 horsepower and about 330 pound-feet of torque. Power is routed through a ZF 8-speed automatic transmission to all 4 wheels with the help of the xDrive system. The second portion to this powertrain is of course the electric motors, which is sandwiched between the engine and the transmission. On its own, the electric motor produces 197 horsepower and approximately 200 pound-feet of torque. Of course, the battery pack powers the electric motor, and the battery pack is actually located in the floor of the vehicle between the axles. The reason why BMW was able to do that instead of putting the battery pack in the trunk is because they've designed the G60 platform to be used on both ICE vehicle as well as electric vehicles. So it's already planned, it's not an afterthought, and so you can put the battery pack at a better or more optimal location. This battery pack has a gross capacity of 22 kilowatt hour and a usable capacity of 14.4 kilowatt hour, which translates to 55 kilometer of electric only range for this 550e. The 550e comes standard with 19-inch rims, but these are the optional 21s, and they're paired to 255 wide tires in the front and 285 wide tires in the rear. The front uses a double wishbone coil suspension setup, whereas the rear uses a multi-link air suspension setup. As for the brakes, the 550e comes standard with M Sport brakes, which are 4 pistons in the front and a single piston floating caliper in the rear. So because the battery pack isn't located underneath the trunk floor, you actually get the same exact cargo space as you would in the gas model, so 520 liters. You can also, of course, fold down the rear seats 40-20-40 split by pulling this lever and then pushing the rear seats down. Unfortunately, there isn't any more space underneath the trunk floor, and it's also not completely flat. With that said, it's still fairly usable space. I just wish that there is more touring models here in Canada. Inside, the 550e comes standard with BMW's sustainable Vigenza upholstery. In this case, it's the smoke white two-tone interior. I quite like the design, I like the patterns, I like the material feel, it feels quite premium, and the seats are also very comfortable. But of course, you can also opt for the leather interior as well as a number of different color combinations if you like. As tested, this vehicle comes with panoramic sunroof, rear heated seats, sunshades for both the side as well as the rear, and also this little window over here. With the sunshades up, I actually feel very isolated from the outside world, which means it's perfect if you have to chauffeur around your VIP kids. Up front, the interior design takes heavy inspiration from the 7 Series. So you've got your ambient light bar all across, your huge curved display, your central glass control panel over here, as well as a thick steering wheel. I do like the design, the ambient lighting is really cool, the curved display also looks very modern. The build quality is exceptional, and even though I do find some subtle hints of cost cutting from the materials, it generally feels very nice in here. The iDrive software is really good, the system is very responsive, the graphics also look really nice. Overall, it is on the more complicated side, but once you get the hang of it, it's great. You've got a ton of different customizations when it comes to visuals, your lighting, your cluster, things like that. And then the voice assistant system also works very well. You can basically control everything that you want. And of course, you still have wireless Apple CarPlay support and wireless Android Auto support. As for some of the pain points of this cabin, yep, you saw it coming, it's touch buttons related. Now, I'm not talking about the climate control being on screen. I think the system is fast enough and the voice control is accurate enough, and I've just gotten used to it. It's not really a big problem. The big problem I have is this rotary dial. I am appreciative of the fact that I have the rotary dial. I think is an essential portion of the BMW iDrive system, but this whole thing is a big piece of haptic touch pad, which means that on paper, when you touch something, when you press something, it vibrates and you know where you're touching, all is well. But in practice, I end up finding myself resting my palm on the touchpad and it doesn't really have palm rejection. So a lot of the times it just registered my input inaccurately, and that's kind of frustrating. And as for the buttons on the light bar, like your memory seat, your lock and unlock, your hazard, things like that, there's no haptic feedback. So it's a little bit difficult to know whether if you press certain buttons or not. You just always have to look and press and then check. Again, it's just a little bit frustrating. BMW, could you please not try to reinvent buttons and just give us physical buttons? I would be so much happier and I would have way less to complain, and this would make the whole system, the whole experience a lot easier and a lot better. Anyway, rant aside, this 5 Series is very well equipped. The seats are heated, ventilated, and has memory functions for both the driver's seats and the passenger seat in the front row. There's also leg extenders, bolster adjustments, plus of course heated steering wheel. This car also has a head-up display, augmented reality navigation, wireless charger, as well as a beautiful sounding Bowers & Wilkins sound system. Alright, let's hit the road. First things first, you might be a little surprised to find out that this 550 does not actually have a dedicated EV driving mode. But that's actually intentional because the EV to ICE transition is so smooth that you should just treat this as kind of like a normal hybrid. The car will turn on the engine when more power is needed, and all you'll feel is a little bit of a kickdown. When power is no longer needed, the engine will turn off and you'll be back into efficient EV driving. In both personal and efficient mode, the car will use battery power first. You'll see on the cluster the EV power bar and the threshold for the engine to turn on. There is also some leeway at the threshold point, so I've never had the experience of unintentionally turning on the engine when I don't want it to, aside from when I was just learning the car. In efficient mode specifically, the throttle response is dulled a little bit more, the car will try to stay in EV mode a little bit more, and it will also use the arrows on the power bar to teach you or guide you to drive a little bit more efficiently with your throttle application. So what's it like driving in electric power only? I would say that overall it's pretty good. There's enough power for the city and also on the highway. Right now I'm in traffic on the highway. Of course, I'm using electric power. You also get a little bit of the BMW iconic sounds when you accelerate, so it's not just wind noise and road noise in the cabin. There's a little bit of Hans Zimmer's in here. However, what I've noticed is that there's frequently a slight delay from the time that I step on the accelerator to the time that the car actually starts moving. I don't know why it's there. It feels weird. This only applies to when I'm driving with electric power only. Maybe BMW can issue a software update to fix this, but it doesn't feel that confidence inspiring. Now, what if you want to save the battery for later? Well, not to worry, because there is a settings in the menus where you can maintain the battery. Once that setting is turned on, the car will act as a normal hybrid, turning the engine on and off, driving without affecting the battery levels. You can also tell if the car is running on electric power only if you look at the battery level gauge on the bottom right side of the gauge cluster. If that bar is lit up in blue, that means you're using electric power only. But if that bar is set to white only, then that means you're using both engine power and electric power. Additionally, even if you're in hybrid mode, you will still see the EV power bar threshold point, so you can still adjust your driving to try to accommodate the car and keep the engine turned off as much as possible. But once you switch into sport mode, the engine powers on, and the beautiful, beautiful soundtrack from the B58 fills the cabin, plus a little bit of electric sounds. It's an interesting sort of combination, but it still sounds really good. Oh man. Downshift, downshift. This is amazing. This car, you flip a switch and then the car instantly becomes a blast to drive. It's such a joy, and I absolutely enjoy it. You've got 483 horsepower and 516 pound-feet of torque to your deployment. Yeah, you don't run out of power. You also have this boost mode where you can pull the down paddle, hold it, and then you will instantly be at maximum power for 30 seconds. Again, could come in handy when you're just cruising on the highway and you want to overtake someone. Now, I wouldn't say it's quite M550 levels of fun, because ultimately that had a V8, but it's not bad. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a BMW with an inline six. It just feels like home. Surprisingly, you'll also hear quite a lot of blow-off sounds if you have the windows down from the turbos, which really adds to the fun when you're in sport mode. For a plug-in hybrid with a relatively big battery pack, we're talking 22 kilowatt hours of gross capacity here, the 550e doesn't actually weigh that much. The curb weight of this car is about 2,200 kilos, which is actually 300 kilos, approximately 300 kilos less than the new M5. Adding to the fact that the battery pack is located down to the ground or low to the ground, handling is not bad. I like the chassis tuning of this car, and I also like the fact that they prioritize comfort and ride quality over sporty and stiff suspension. But if you want more handling dynamics, you can get the Adaptive Suspension Professional package, which also includes rear wheel steer, and that will be able to help you hide the length of the car a little bit more, and also the weight of the car a little bit better. As for safety and driving technology, there's a ton of them with this car. This tester is equipped with the Advanced Driver Assistance package, so not only do you get emergency braking, parking sensors, 360 camera, adaptive cruise control, lane centering, things like that, you also get hands-free highway driving. And as part of that suite, you also get hands-free lane changes. How that works is that when the car in front of you is going slower than your set cruise control speed and there's no cars around you, the car will suggest to change lanes, and all you have to do is look at the side mirror, and then the car will take it as a confirmation, and the car will execute the lane change for you. Technology. But of course, with hands-free driving, there's always a sensor making sure that you're paying attention to the road. However, in my experience, especially at night, for some reason, it just keeps saying that I'm not attentive, even though I am most definitely looking at the road. Maybe it's my glasses, or maybe my eyes are just too small, I don't know. Either way, BMW needs to recalibrate this so that it works better, because it just keeps prompting me that I'm not paying attention to the road, and it's really, really annoying. In terms of efficiency, the B58 is known for being very efficient, and it does deliver here. On the highway, at about 110 kilometers an hour, I was able to achieve 6.5 liters per 100 kilometers without battery assistance. So that's either with the battery set to maintain battery level, or when the battery is completely empty. In the city, if you rely on the engine alone, of course, it's a little worse. Plus, you're driving an inline six, you're probably enjoying it a little bit more anyways. But if you want to drive it efficiently, that's where the battery power comes in handy. In my testing, I was able to do between 20 to 23 kilowatt hour per 100 kilometers with the AC blasting. On the highway, it's a little bit worse with electric power only, but the difference is honestly quite negligible. Maybe it's the weather, maybe it's the wind, maybe it's just my week of testing, but it's similar also around that range. Combined, I was able to do 60 kilometers of EV only driving range, so it's a little bit better than the rated 55 kilometer number. Overall, the 550e isn't perfect, but I think BMW has gotten it very right with the positioning of the car. You've got gobs of power and good handling, but at the same time, you're not sacrificing ride quality and comfort. This isn't an M-Light car, and it doesn't need to be. It's a luxury executive sedan first and a sport sedan second, which is, I think, exactly what the targeted demographics for this vehicle is looking for. If you don't go nuts on the options list, you can get a very nicely spec'd 550e for under 100 grand Canadian, which I think is not a bad price for what you're getting. Comparing to an E450, they're basically priced exactly the same, but with this 550e, you're getting a ton more power and also the flexibility of the plug-in system. What do you guys think? Are you leaning towards buying a 550e or a Mercedes E-Class, or maybe even an Audi? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.